Well, there just weren't that many skaters.
Really?
So there were two other skaters in my high school.
But the skate park was never occupied? Was it like always kind of an empty thing? Or was it...
No, I mean, there weren't many skate parks, so the one that we had was where everyone would converge. So
Yeah.
there were a handful, maybe a dozen people there at a time, but nothing major, no.
But for the most part, it was like you in the neighborhood and maybe like one other dude. Did you catch a lot of flack for it?
For skating?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like the whole, like it was so funny because it was, I think people don't really realize that it's such a part of our pop culture now, but when you were one of the pioneers of your world, it was kind of like you were a man on your own island.
It was a weird time. Are we just going?
Yeah, we're rolling. Yeah.
It was a weird time because
intro?
skating wasn't popular,
Right.
and so, but I was starting to have success in skating, so it was this really kind of niche industry and interest, and so I would go to school and literally people would drive by in the parking lot and yell out "skater fag."
Skater fag.
Yeah, skater fag.
You should have adopted
that. Was like
that.
the thing. It was like,
Skater fag.
And then I would go to, say, Florida for the weekend and go to some big championships and have fans.
Yeah.
And like sign autographs and win money and then go back to school, skater fag. Like it was just a weird, it was a very weird.
You were a championship skater fag.
Paradox. What's that?
You're a championship skater fag. Yeah.
That's champion skater fag,
Yeah.
buddy.
Correct yourself.
In here, we pour whisk, 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 whisk.
You were that creature in the ginger beard.
Sturdy and ginger.
Like vampires, the ginger gene is a curse.
Gingers are beautiful.
You owe me $5 for the whiskey and $75 for the horse.
Gingers? Oh, hell no.
This whiskey is excellent.
Ginger. I like gingers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Whiskey Ginger. My guest today is one of my favorite people on earth. I say that for all my guests, but I mean it yet again today. Mr. Tony Hawk. Tony, thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Cheers to you.
Cheers. Thank
Having
you.
a little whiskey. We've had the fans ask. It's Knob Creek 100. That's what we're drinking right now. And it's delicious because so many people are just like, you have to tell people what the fuck you're drinking. I'm like, okay, dude. The fans get so agitated at nothing. You see, like down here, there's like a this light switch. This outlet.
Yes.
For a while, it cracked, so the panel was cracked. How many people, for real? We had so many people write in to be like, the panel's cracked, man. What the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
They
I just
find
had this
everything.
conversation with someone. I did this interview. It's like a half-hour interview, and I was wearing a hoodie, and one of the whatever drawstrings was kind of like flipped up by accident. I
Sure.
didn't know.
Why would you?
That's all people talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, there is genuinely good content in this interview.
Right.
That's all they can obsess
Doesn't
on.
matter.
It's
Yeah.
Like, I can't watch this with that drawstring.
Tony's string, dude. Tony's
Yeah.
string is so annoying.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So before we jump back, we were talking about, San Diego and growing up in that life, and you kind of being the only one of your crew. When did you feel like people started to culturally catch on around you, and skating became much thicker and more popular?
It was around my senior year of high school.
'Cause then it
I mean,
really
like
took-
that was the wave in the '80s, though. So it's hard to compare it now or to the wave in the early 2000s because it was on a whole different level
Right.
at that time. But in the '80s, suddenly I was making pretty good money. People would know my name. They wouldn't necessarily be able to pick me out of a crowd, but they knew who that there's this skater Tony Hawk that's successful. And I bought a house while I was still a senior in high school.
Holy shit. Where'd you buy? Where was it? Down in San Diego?
In Carlsbad.
Oh,
yeah.
in Carlsbad, yeah.
And so that was a challenge to show up to school on time or at all
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
senior year.
Yeah, how could you?
Because, everyone's waiting for whose parents are out of town. My parents were never home.
They weren't there.
So-
Did your parents fight you on that when you wanted to buy a house, or were they like, nah, dude?
No, it was my dad's idea.
Okay, because he wanted you to financially set yourself up a
Yeah,
little bit?
yeah,
Right.
because he thought, and I was, I was oblivious or blissfully oblivious in the
Right.
sense that I thought I was just going to keep going. And he saw that maybe this will be short-lived and you better put your money away, which was way smarter, obviously.
But turns out,
Well, he was right, though, because I had a few good years and then everything just dropped.
what was it? How long was the gap that you feel about kind of dropping off or whatever?
Before it dropped?
Yeah.
I would say about 4 years until it started to really decline, and then suddenly my paychecks were all royalties,
Right.
And so they started dropping by half every month.
Wow.
And suddenly I was with 2 mortgages, a kid on the way, and my income was just dwindling.
Do you think it was? Do you think like socially, pop culturally, skateboarding started to kind of die off? What was this thing that kicked it back into full gear? You think?
Well, it definitely took a while. So I would say in the years 1991 to 1996, 97-ish,
Yeah.
skating was underground. It was all street. I mean, the mid 90s kind of captured that, where everyone that skated was considered an outlaw because there were no designated facilities.
Right.
So if you wanted to go skate, you had to go out on the streets and be a nuisance to people.
Right. You had to be an annoying. I'm an '80s baby, and I had P-Rod on the show,
Yeah.
and we talked extensively about kind of my generation of when I started skateboarding when I was a kid. And by the way, I will make comparisons. We're very similar skill level of skateboarding, Tony and I. Pretty parallel, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm right there. Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah, now, yeah. No, when I started, it was kind of still this, negatively viewed thing. Everyone had a problem with it. It wasn't so promoted. It wasn't such a common thing. You were
And
still
parents
an
didn't
asshole.
want their kids doing it.
Yeah, my
but-
parents fucking hated the fact
Yeah.
that I would go hang out all day long at a board shop. That was so annoying. They thought it
Yeah.
was such a waste of time.
Yeah.
I was like, you don't get it. That's like our community. And to them, it was just, it was socially such a waste of space and time. And I guess I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think is the energy shift that kind of kicked it back into being okay again? Or, I mean, I don't know.
I think it had a lot to do with the X Games initially. That was the first one was in 95. It was still kind of an experimental and still viewed as, I don't know, like a test circus type of thing. And then once they started weeding out all this sort of stranger sports that they added in there at the beginning.
Right, because they did have some weird shit.
Rock climbing, bungee jumping, sky surfing, eco challenge.
If Red Bull existed, they would have been all over that shit. That would have been Red Bull Presents, X Games Presents.
And then everything was extreme. So, you're a skater. You're an extreme athlete. No, I'm a skater.
Just a skater, man.
I'm not
Yeah.
rock climbing.
I always hated that term when they say extreme athlete. It was so weird. It was such a strange.
Well, they just want to, because they don't understand it. So they want to just sort of pigeonhole you into.
If they can categorize you,
it
makes it easier for them, right?
Yeah, but as that progressed and as the more refined sports and popular sports started to rise in that movement in the X Games, things started to take off. I mean, I would say after like 1997 in the X Games, that was the thing kids are watching.
Yeah, it became the thing.
Yeah. And then combine that with our video game release in 1999, that was sort of the perfect storm and the tipping point of popularity. Like that's when skating was just in the mainstream, and that was when parents embraced it.
Right.
Because they saw these guys they saw people on TV, they saw a genuine career that could be had.
Right.
And I think also they saw the attitude, like the skaters that were shown on TV then, including guys like Paul Rodriguez, were all approachable. They were all real. They were doing it because they loved it. They weren't doing it for $1 million contracts. They weren't at arm's length from the fans. They were right there. They did it because they loved it. And I feel like kids could identify with that.
Right. I think, well, they were that was kind of the revolution of really like connecting with your fans and because I remember going to watch team tours, and team board signings or whatever at board shops. And I always thought that was incredible because as a kid, you can't imagine all these your favorite team coming to town that you're going to get to meet them at this before they go to the park and go skate. I think that was kind of this thing that helped the culture become so unified and so large, because I remember meeting guys and being like, fucking Jamie Thomas, and freaking out.
And you would go get to skate with them.
Yeah, it was incredible. You got to literally just go. Yeah, that was that fourth wall was broken. This you couldn't touch them type of thing.
Right.
Now that they were like, no, come fuck with us, and whoever's the best can also come skate with us. I thought that to me was that was, I kind of think, the term for my childhood of when it became so popular and so big. I mean, that whole the kids that rollerbladed in my high school, it was like such a strong division of like rollerblading kids,
oh, yeah.
fruit booters or whatever they wanted,
right.
yeah, and skateboarders, and it rollerblading dissipated because of it. In fact, Nate Harmony, pro skater, Nate Harmony,
yeah,
his brother was a rollerblader, and they both lived they're both from where I'm from, and I remember hearing about him that he was so good. And when
Josh Harmony.
Josh, I'm sorry. Josh, Nate's his brother. My bad.
Oh, okay,
Josh Harmony.
okay.
I'm sorry. Josh Harmony. Yeah, Josh is the skater. My brain. But I remember hearing about him and how good he was, and then like seeing him in video parts, and I was like, oh my God, he was better than good. I mean, I remember him like leaving our suburb of Chicago and coming out here and becoming, I mean, bigger than big. And his brother, who was actually really good at rollerblading, that just all went away. I mean, it just like quit. Rollerblading got like squashed. But for a long time, it was such it was becoming its own thing.
Yeah.
And ESPN was putting it on. I mean, like they were doing
absolutely. Yeah, that was on the forefront. But also that just was more dictated by the sales too.
Yeah.
You know, so many more people were riding rollerblades because that was like the exercise and the transportation back then. And and I didn't have a problem with it because I was in those slow years. Skating was hard to make a living at. You know, the X Games were coming on, sure, but that wasn't necessarily a steady income.
Right.
And so I got invited as a special guest to rollerblade shows.
So you'd be the only
I would be
skater?
the token skateboarder in
Wow.
the rollerblade shows. And I honestly cruised for at least 2 different summers, you know, like actually being able to pay my mortgage through doing
rollerblading tours.
Yeah, not rollerblading tours, or it would be, one of them was, they did Extreme Wheels Live in Santa Rosa.
The name is so annoying.
Yeah,
Extreme Wheels
So
Live.
they had Matt Hoffman as a special guest, BMXer,
Sure, yeah.
and they had me as a special guest skateboarder. And then we would come out in the middle of the show while they're doing all their dance routines and whatever,
Right.
and skate a vert ramp.
Did you ever catch any flack when you were there with those things? Like,
No, because the skateboarders were hyped. Like the skateboarders they were the minority back then, like the hardcore skaters. So skaters would come to the show like, holy shit, Tony Hawk and Matt Hoffman are here.
Right.
This is awesome. And rollerblading was so prolific that it wasn't like they could ignore it or anything. And so it was interesting. And then I got invited to do these demos at Six Flags parking lots.
So did you travel and doing Six Flags demos?
Well, we would be at a Six Flags for a week,
Right.
doing 3 demos a day, you know, with like 4 rollerbladers, 1 BMXer,
Wow.
and me, and $100 a day.
Who was the rollerbladers? Do you remember who the names were?
There were these 3 Australian dudes.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, I have a vague memory of like
They weren't the big names, because the big names, those guys they could command a lot of money.
they were making way more money.
Yeah, and so these guys were solid dudes, you know, from Australia, and they were super cool. Like I still keep in touch with a couple of them, but
What do they don't rollerblade anymore? Is there?
no. One of them was an actor. One was a snowboarder who ended up being like the Burton rep of all of Australia.
That's wild.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's so funny to think, like, because I'm sure everyone
because they
thinks,
could do like basic vert tricks.
right,
They got jobs. Yeah.
right. And you toured for how long on a Six Flag parking lot?
I did a
venture?
couple stints, St. Louis for like 2 weeks, and I think Dallas for a couple weeks. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't the biggest thing I ever did, but it is what I needed to survive at the time.
Totally. Well, we do the same things, you know, like comics. I did this with P-Rod too. I said make all these parallels of kind of like stand-up comedy and professional athletes at this level. Like, we both have to kind of pay your dues and do these weird tours. And I can't tell you the number of shit shows I've done in the middle of nowhere and stayed in motels and made no money. And you just you have to grind it out. But I will say those are the best.
That's sort of the line of demarcation where, are you a professional or not? Mm-hmm. You want to be a pro skater? It's not all on your terms.
Right.
It's not just wake up late, skate when you want. People expect you to perform, and you're going to go places that are not the most ideal terrain. Like, you feel sick, you know, the crowd maybe isn't the nicest,
Right.
but you got to step up.
Yeah, you have to do it.
Yeah, you got to do it, and you just push through and do your best, you know.
Right.
Present yourself with integrity and do it. And you know, it's not, I'm not saying like the whole thing is a strain, but it can be hard.
Right. I think people do that thing where they go, your life is so easy. You've done the thing that you love your whole life.
Oh, you guys just smoke weed and wake up late and skate, shoot video. Like, no. I mean, some people maybe, but
some do. Yeah, I'm sure
they don't
some.
last long.
Right. That's the thing, right? The same thing in our world. It's like, doing comedy, how hard is your lifestyle? It's like, what do you mean? I have to work every single day of
and
my life.
hone your craft and work on it. Yeah.
But for them, it's like there are examples of people who just kind of have waned their way through. And so they go, this shit is easy. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And also, if you're good, you make something look very easy, right?
Right.
What do you find? This is a question I wanted to ask you. Like, people will say these things. They'll do backhanded compliments, and they're trying to be nice. But I want to know, like, what your least favorite thing that someone compliments you on that's actually backhanded or annoying. Like, what's the one for you? Like, for us, someone will go, "You're really funny." They'll go, "Oh, thank you so much," and they'll go, "Do you know Bill Burr?" And they'll bring up and I'll go,
right.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, I love him. It's like, okay, why couldn't you just have said I'm funny? It's like when you were on your come up, was there ever that thing where people were like, man, I love you, but you know who I really love?
Well, it was Christian Osoy, without question. Yeah.
You got that all the time.
Yeah, in the 80s. It was very, the styles of skating was very divided.
Yeah.
And it was you either, I mean, this was very much in the sort of mid to late 80s. People, they loved Christian Osoy because of his style or because he went high, or they liked me because I did tricks.
Because you were smooth.
And you had to choose sides.
Right.
I mean, it was very much like that. And so I used to get booed at contests. Like, I used to get shit thrown at me when I was skating.
Because they loved him.
Yeah, by like the Christian fans.
That's so weird.
You know, the Osoy fans. It was hilarious because he and I knew each other and we would actually skate together. Like, we appreciated each other's styles. And we both learned techniques from each other. But there was these divided mentalities. And you were either with him or with me. And so
what fueled that though? Really, like what could that have been really from?
There was it was a bit of both like style versus technique, but also it was the irony is that there was NorCal versus SoCal, and everyone was for Christian that was NorCal, but he lived in LA.
Right. So, yeah.
But he skated for all the NorCal companies.
Sure.
So he skated for Indy, and he skated for all these Santa Cruz brands, and
sure.
And so it was like I was Pal Peralta and I was Tracker, and
right.
I was.
You were
like
that SoCal demon, so they just tagged you as this Southern California.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny in hindsight. It felt like everything back then. It felt like I had this army against me.
Right.
And Christian and I, we laugh about it now. But it was at the same time, I had super passionate fans.
Right.
That were hyped on the way I skated, and so I didn't think I could win everyone.
Right. Well, I mean that's the thing, right? They always say like if everybody likes you, you're probably not that good.
Yeah.
Like if everyone loves you, it's like you're going to have, you're gonna have that backlash. It's the same thing with us. It's like not every fan is gonna like your shit or like what you're putting out. You just have to kind of keep going and find the ones that you do love. What you mentioned something that I want to say. Like you said, kind of like the receivability of what happened with skating. Do you think it's because vert guys kind of come off a little bit more? There's something about vert guys versus street guys. That vert guys kind of come off more like clean and well-to-do, and there's the edge is a little bit softer on vert guys than sometimes you see. These videos and street guys that they're so raw, and they show just like filthy sides of them in these videos. And I think vert guys always got pushed to, at least my generation, as like. Very clean cut kind of.
I think that's just more generational because the vert crew that you were watching were kind of on their tail end of their careers for the most part.
Right.
And their only way to make a living was by competing.
Right.
You couldn't be of what we know now as a video skater as if you skate a vert.
Yeah, it didn't
You
exist.
had to go compete, or you had to do these demos. You had to play the game. And it was really difficult to make a living that way, and so they didn't get the same type of recognition or respect or coverage that street guys did, who were out and about and pushing limits and skating on everything and anything.
Sure.
Because vert just wasn't that accessible. So I understand how you saw it.
Yeah.
But I think that you're probably seeing these guys who were on the tail end of trying to make a career at it, and you couldn't be some punk kid,
right? It just didn't work that way.
Yeah. Flipping people off and
right.
smoking cigarettes up on the deck because it's no one's gonna hire you.
Well, but that's funny though, right? Because then that kind of became the norm of street teams. Was the more raucous they were, the more well they were received. Right?
Kinda. I think that was just a symbol of where street skating came from, and it came from It came from people doing it themselves and
Right.
making the urban landscape their skate park, and through that being considered outlaws because they're skating handrails and they're skating
Right.
picnic benches and they're skating in public spaces, and that's that was definitely the vibe of skating through the 90s.
Yeah.
Of what people considered skating, and then it wasn't until I think the late 90s, early 2000s, when suddenly skating was everywhere and parents were encouraging their kids to do it, and it was on TV, and it was celebrated, and there were skate parks. Like the skate parks really changed everything.
Yeah, and now they're everywhere. I mean,
Right.
we just talked about. I had rented a Tesla to go to Mammoth.
Lone Pine.
Yeah, and Lone Pine has a skate park.
Yeah.
Right by the charging
Yeah,
station.
our foundation helped with that one.
That's incredible. Like I'm charging up, and I was like, I'm just gonna go take a walk or go get something to eat or drink, and I was on the phone with someone. I was like, you won't believe this. There is a skate park right here in this little tiny
and Bishop and Mammoth.
Bishop. Yeah, there's one in Bishop too. Yeah. So did you help with all those?
With Mammoth and with Lone Pine. Yeah.
That's awesome. Your foundation is the one that kind of
Yeah, our foundation helps with public skate parks in low-income areas.
That's incredible. Yeah, because I saw it, I was like, this is so. Because I guess when I was a kid, there was a couple of skate parks around, but man, they were really shit. And I see them today, and they're so nice and they're so well done, and a lot of concrete. And they used to be kind of those old.
Well, what happened was, and this is a big reason why I started the foundation was that if a city decided they were going to do a skate park, it was usually a more affluent city who had the budget for it.
Sure.
And thought that they were being hip and
Right.
cool
For the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they would get bids from sidewalk contractors who claimed they knew how to build skate parks,
Right.
but didn't.
Of course
they
not.
just knew how to pour concrete, and they would design these parks based on, I don't know, 720 video game. Like, I don't know where they got their ideas. I skated a park. I skated a park in the early 2000s, right outside of Chicago, Illinois. I got invited to the grand opening. I got paid to go there, which should have been my first warning sign.
Right.
And they said, do you want to see the park? I got there the night before we were supposed to do the grand opening. They said, do you want to skate the park before? No one's actually been able to skate it yet. I said, yeah, sure. So I went with all these city council members, all these old white dudes.
Yeah.
And they're
Who've
they're on
never
the fence.
skateboarded in
Never
their
skateboarded.
life. Yeah.
And they're all on the fence watching me, and they literally have headlights of the cars to give me lighting.
Show you light, yeah.
And everything was designed wrong. I mean, the ledges were this high, so you couldn't even really board slide them without hitting your wheels. There was a set of stairs that went to a wall.
It ended at a wall?
Yeah, like a wall, just
Genius.
8 feet up front of it. I don't know what.
Perfect. That's
I
exactly
guess they
what
thought
you need.
the stairs were literally just for walking up.
Yeah.
And I tried to skate it, and then I came out, and they're all very excited, and they said, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "It's terrible. It has no flow. Like
Right.
it doesn't. It's probably not as good as a local street spot." And they said, "Yeah, that's what all the kids were saying when we were building it, but we told them wait till Tony Hawk gets here, and he'll show you how to ride it."
Yeah, wait till Tony Hawk is going to come shit on us, not you kids. He'll come shit on us.
Yeah,
Did they feel it?
but
Did they understand that it was not? That it was kind of a
They
bummer.
kind of didn't. They were still thought
Yeah.
they really were doing something cool,
Totally.
and progressive. But that was the moment when I realized that I had a voice and I could affect change if I really pushed at it and tried to bridge that gap between the city council people that I can talk to,
Right.
and the kids that actually need these spaces. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had to do something, and that's when I started the foundation.
That's awesome.
But more so I wanted to direct the funds to more low income areas, not just the upper.
Right, the upper because the upper crust neighborhoods they can afford
the
it.
suburbs of Chicago. I was looking
Right.
for something that would be where kids really are challenged. And we've been doing it 17 years now.
Wow. How many have you built?
We've helped to fund over 600.
600 parks. Is there like a link on your website or something like that? Or a website that you can find all the parks that you guys have done?
Oh yeah, TonyHawkFoundation.org. Yeah,
TonyHawkFoundation.org.
we've done them in every state, and we have a partnership with Ralph C. Wilson Foundation to do specific projects in the Midwest, mostly in Michigan. My wife's from Detroit, so that is close to our heart too.
God, That makes me. I just watched that Flint documentary, Flint Town. Did you watch that?
No, I remember the Michael Moore one.
No. This just came out on Netflix. It's about the Flint Police Department. If anybody hasn't seen this, oh my God, it's the most tragic. I mean, Flint is in such dire straits, and they show what the police department has to go through in a town where there's no job opportunity. There's nothing. Yeah. There's such a lack of everything.
I remember on a birdhouse tour in the 90s when we were literally skating in parking lots of skate shops.
Of Six Flags and skate shops?
No. Like skating in parking lots of skate shops, begging them for money for food and a hotel so we could get to the next city.
Damn.
But we stopped in Flint on our way up to Chicago. Would Flint be on the way to Chicago? I don't know.
Down.
Right, but we were heading up, so.
From Chicago up to Flint. Flint's up north. Michigan's north.
Oh, then we were going to Detroit.
Okay, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that could be.
Sorry, everyone from the Midwest.
We're not map people anymore.
I was just driving. I didn't have a phone nav. Yeah. I had Thomas Maps.
I was gonna say Thomas guides. Yeah, phones didn't exist, man.
So anyway, I remember we stopped in Flint to get some street footage, and it was the only place that we went to where we didn't get kicked out of anywhere.
Yeah, they didn't care. They were like, go ahead.
They did not care. Actually, I think they were more concerned for our safety from the locals.
Right. They're like, why are you here?
Yeah, like, what are you guys doing?
That was like, I'll never forget. I was running. That just reminded me. I was running in Tampa one day when I was doing shows, and I was just running, and I put on headphones and I run. I kind of just disappear, and whatever. I don't know where. I figured it all out. And this woman is waving me down, and I like take off my headphones. She looks really concerned.
Yeah.
And she like waves me over, and I run across the street. I'm like, are you okay? And she goes, are you okay? And I was like, I'm totally fine. I'm like looking at myself. She goes, what the fuck are you doing in this neighborhood? And I was like, am I not? And she's like, get out of here now. I was like in like the worst part of Tampa. And so of course I start running back, and she's like, go on. But I could tell, you could tell the look on someone's face when you're in a neighborhood you're not supposed to be in, when they're like, why are you, what are you doing?
So basically in the early 90s, all the skate parks were in those neighborhoods.
The worst neighborhoods.
Including Tampa.
Right. Well, I mean, Tampa's an interesting place. There's some Tampa people that'll watch and be like, "What's your problem?"
No, but Tampa skate park, like it was notorious for, they had all kinds of problems just from locals or from crime around the area.
Just crime ridden, yeah. So it just makes it worse.
I remember
and worse.
I had a similar experience like that in the late 80s. We went through New York on tour, but we didn't actually have a demo in New York, in Manhattan.
Right.
And we just wanted to go into the city and buy CBGB shirts. Like that was the goal. And so we parked our tour van, which was a piece of shit anyway. Like people written graffiti on it and stuff. Parked the van, and we're walking to CBGB's, and these cops stop, and they're like, "What are you guys doing?" Get out of town. Yeah, everyone knows you're here. We weren't recognizable. They just knew that we were like these white dudes.
Yeah, these young white skater bros.
Yeah, like they're like, get in your van and get out of here. And so I think we ended up parking somewhere else, ran to CBGB's, got shirts, and bailed.
And then ran home. Yeah.
I mean, that was New York is a different city now.
Oh my God, Manhattan now.
Times Square was frightening back then.
For the longest time, from what I've heard in the past of Manhattan, you hear all these like terrible stories of like, the Lower East Side being so dangerous, and the East Village. Now anybody goes to Manhattan, you can visit any part of Manhattan and feel so safe, and it's like unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean,
it's funny though that Lower East Side. I mean, I just interviewed Mike D actually for my Sirius show, and hearing his stories about Lower East Side in the 80s are fantastic.
Yeah,
because he was in it, and he was part of the movement, and so if you could have been on that side of the coin, it would have been amazing.
Sure. Yeah, because he watched the revolution kind of go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now you just go down there and you're like, look at this nice
I know,
nice $8 million building.
Here's a new gastropub.
Yeah. I want to ask you, we don't have to stick to skate stuff, although I'm super interested in all that world. But like you have a plethora of children who many of them skate. Obviously, you have
all of them.
Yeah, professional. Your son's a professional.
One of them's a professional.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And a buddy and I were talking that you threw up a video teaching your daughter.
Oh yeah, that was a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
and people went nuts on the internet.
It was crazy. Yeah, I didn't realize how much that would resonate,
because you're active online. Like you're super active online. I see you post a ton of stuff about skating or with the family and all that stuff, and it's awesome to see the window into that world of what that's like. Because I think people kind of dehumanize pro athletes at some point, that you're like,
sure,
they're not people. Like,
well, also because they're so structured with what they put out. It's all very controlled.
Totally.
It's
Yeah,
all
the
very-
machine.
yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a machine, and I've always done my own social media, and I've
Yeah.
always tried to keep it interesting and real, and this is what we're dealing with here,
Right. And you and you putting up your daughter, was it? Did she? Like, is it something you consciously thought about before you threw it up, or you were like, nah?
The way that unfolded, it's funny because I actually talked about this to her the other day. The way that unfolded was, I promised her she could go get her favorite food if she dropped in. Like, it wasn't that I was trying to bribe her. It was just that she was hesitant for so long. I was like,
Sure.
well, what would you want to do, Katie? She goes, I want to go to Panera and get chicken noodle soup. All right, let's do it right after you do it. And then she was hesitant, and finally I said, Katie, I know that you want to do it, and I know how disappointed you're going to be if you don't.
Right.
If we leave here and you don't do it, and that was what shifted her,
Triggered her mind,
Yeah, triggered it. But so that was it. She did it, and then we went to Panera so she could get her chicken noodle soup. And while we were waiting for the soup, I just took the last minute of the footage and was like, oh, this would be cool. Like, people get to see it, because it feels like she really overcame that.
Sure.
And then the next morning, it's on news sites.
It's
and it was like
exploded. Yeah.
14 million views on Twitter, and I was like, what happened?
Yeah. Dude.
And also, of course, I would never have known that would have happened. But had I known, I would have put a little edit together of her first attempts, because she fell once, like significantly, and overcame it. And then the other time she like jumped off right as she was going in, and like all that building up to it would have been a better video segment. But then at the same time, it would have been more structured, and it would have been
right. I think the rawness of it was why.
Yeah.
It was just it is what it is. That's why people liked it.
Yeah, but I I don't want to go on about it, but it was unexpected.
Yeah.
And Katie actually voiced some concern the other day, because she's like, I don't know if you should be putting up all my footage. And I said, Katie, I'll do whatever you're comfortable with. I'm just, I really put that up there for our friends and family, and people know you because I know how excited they'd be to see you do that.
Right.
And she's like, yeah. And then it was more, her concern was like creeps.
Yeah. Well, the internet
and
is
there are
is
plenty of creeps. And
Yes.
I said, Katie, don't worry. I'm never telling where you are.
Right.
Like where you go to school.
No.
Where we live.
No.
None of those things are
No,
out there.
all those details are hidden.
All they know is that you were in the warehouse dropping in.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that eased her fears.
But she's right though. That is funny though. You don't. I mean, like, look, we're
but that's probably on me. I've instilled that in her a few times.
That be careful of creeps.
Just
That's a pretty good thing to instill in your children.
But you know what I mean. Like you can't go into the gory details of why.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, Katie, just don't give your your Instagram name out.
Right.
Things like that.
People are gross.
Yeah.
Turns out people are pretty gross. There's some gross
dudes
people
with
out there.
bad intentions. That's what I tell. I go, there are people with bad intentions, and we can avoid them.
Well, we just moved, and of course, like the first thing my wife gets on Megan's Law or what, and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, that.
And my suggestion is don't ever do it ever,
Yeah,
ever,
no, I
please,
can't.
my God, because every time you're gonna be like,
you're in the orbit.
oh, dude, it's like 4 blocks away. It's like a full on panic.
Yeah.
But you have to like get that stuff out of your head. But you just that's a part of the. I guess
It's
that's
part of parenting in the modern world of social media.
Yeah.
And it's super weird because maybe you haven't told them the facts of life yet, but at the same time you got to be like, watch out for weirdos.
it's a balance. So
It's a balance, yeah.
and for you, I guess that's a great.
Well, that's the other thing is so I told her, I said, look, I'm only doing it if you're comfortable with it. I'm
Right.
not, you're not like. You're not my meal ticket. I'm not trying to put you out there
Bank
like
on
a
my
stage
kid.
mom. Yeah, like I do it if you like it. If you want me to share it, I'll do it. If you
Right.
don't want me to share it, then it's fine.
Right.
And,
Now but it was, which is funny because like did you always secretly hope that your kids would skate? Like Riley being
I
like,
guess it's just because Riley grew up at a time when I was struggling to make a living skating, and so I was doing it every chance I could get at every opportunity.
Yeah.
And we didn't have money for childcare, and so he would just come with me. So he was just surrounded by it. He was just like immersed in it,
Right.
to the point where it wasn't even really a choice. He just picked up a skateboard. Like he was just around it, and it was available to him, and he skated. And
it became like just the normal thing to do.
It was absolutely the normal thing. And then at
Right.
some point, as he got older and better, and then people started having these expectations or putting expectations on him, that's when he sort of realized, oh, do I do this seriously?
Right.
You know, is this a thing? And he has a really good take on it. All my other kids skate for fun, but none of them were trying to make a career out of it.
Sure.
But they're all accomplished. Like, they all can do pretty sick tricks.
But
It's super
he's
fun.
a
Like,
new
and
level.
so we asked me if I hope. Absolutely, I hoped it, and I never pushed any of them into it. The cool thing about this generation is that all the kids dabble in skating at the very least, or they have tried it.
Right.
In my generation, like, you either skated and that's all you did, or you didn't understand it and didn't want to do it at all.
Right. It was like when I was a kid, basketball was the thing I like loved, and beating my dad at basketball, that moment was like, oh, it's like that was like the greatest. Was there a moment with you and Riley?
With Riley, yeah. I remember we were skating this little sort of bank to ledge, and he said, "Dad, can you do frontside kickflip to tail slide?" And I was like, yeah, Riley, I am honored you would ask me that, but there's no fucking way I could do that. No. Like, not a chance.
No.
And he's like, really? I go, yeah, I can barely do frontside kickflips. And then, of course, you know, the next day he learns it.
Because he knows that you can't do it.
No, he was asking for advice on it.
Oh, right.
He wanted to learn it.
Right.
But he was like, how do I do it? I was like, I don't know. Dude, you probably got all the parts of it.
Right.
Just go for it.
So do you think those are those moments that you think also in his mind that he's like, oh shit, I'm legit. I you know, like that. I can also.
Yeah, I think that validation came from his peers, not from me.
Right.
That validation for him came when Andrew Reynolds asked him to be on Baker.
Right.
That's when
huge.
Everything changed for him, where it was like, oh, I'm not just here because of nepotism.
Right.
I'm here because someone recognized my skill, and Andrew doesn't want any part of some kid just riding on his name.
Did he feel like there was this kind of? Did he feel like there was talk of it being like, oh, you're only making it because Tony's your dad?
I think that he heard that. He just did a big interview on 9 Club about this very subject, but I think he heard people saying that, but he never really took it to heart.
Yeah, because you can't.
He already had his friends. He had his crew. You know, people and people knew he was really good for his age.
Well, the cream rises. That's my only opinion. Like, whenever someone says they got in only because XYZ, it's like, sure. And then at some point, it just won't work if it doesn't work. Right?
Yeah.
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, just because someone got free gear and had access to some skate facilities, that doesn't make them great.
Of course not.
Or give them motivation.
Of course not.
Or to have them persevere.
Right. And that's a symptom in our business too. Like, we hear it all the time of like, oh, you know who his uncle is, or you know who. It's like, let me tell you something. Regardless of those facts,
he might have got his foot in the door.
Sure,
but you
have to deliver at some point. Yeah. And we've seen it. I'm not going to mention names, but like, I know people that get into things and you're like, yeah, they suck, and that's why they're not around anymore. Like, they got something, but they just weren't. They couldn't complete the thing. So, but no, I was always curious about that dynamic, because I imagine that's, you know, it is kind of a little weird to follow in your dad's footsteps, but to make your own brand and to be your own thing, I think that's even harder, right? That's even harder than
way harder,
right?
Yeah.
That's because to be your own
carve out
entity.
your own path, and to get out from what would be my shadow, is something that I can't imagine. I can't imagine having done that as a kid.
Right.
I was just trying to have anyone recognize me as a skater. I would have copied anyone if I thought it would have worked.
Right, if it was going to work.
But I couldn't. Like, I didn't have the chops.
Yeah. I want to ask you one thing that's on my mind that makes me laugh. Every time I think of Tony Hawk Pro Skater, I can't not hear that Goldfinger song. Dude. Yeah. I can't not hear it. It's so embedded in my brain for the rest of my life. You didn't have any fingers on picking those songs, did you?
Absolutely, yeah.
You did. So
not
you did.
Not the newer bands, which I would.
Sure.
They're not new now, but in, for instance, Goldfinger or Millencolin.
Right.
That was all sort of the music department reaching out to try to get newer punk type of music. But for the old school stuff, Primus, Dead Kennedys,
right.
Ramones, you know, all that stuff. That was definitely my influence.
That was all you.
Yeah, because I would just give them a list of songs and bands that I grew up listening to at skate parks, or that I heard at skate parks.
Right.
X, Black Flag, you know, all that stuff. Circle Jerks, like that. So that was my input, and I always thought, oh, it's going to be super cool that we get to have the soundtrack of skating. I never imagined that people would appreciate it.
Oh my God. It's almost like the way that movie soundtracks used to be bought on CD. Like people would be like, oh my God, I love that soundtrack to that
Right.
film. That was the soundtracks to those games were just as
I mean,
dominant.
that went so big at the time that we actually got to do a soundtrack CD.
Yeah, yes.
So we had new bands cover old punk songs, and it was like a bestseller. I went on a CD release tour.
And you didn't make any of the music. That's the best part.
Yeah, it was crazy.
You
It was,
curated. Well, you're
it was crazy,
a
but
curator.
It's funny you say that. So, when does this air anyway?
In a week.
Oh, okay.
week.
So, I'm working on a big concert fundraiser for our foundation.
Okay.
Because as of this year, it's been 20 years since the release of the first video game.
Yes.
And so my idea was to have this fundraiser and invite a bunch of bands that are associated with the game.
Sure.
That got to be much more complicated than I imagined it to be. Mm-hmm. But I did get a confirmation from Bad Religion to play.
Oh, so they're going to play.
So Bad Religion is headlining.
Awesome.
And we have this band from Australia who was just kept hitting me up on Twitter. They're a cover band of only songs from our game.
What's the band
Called
name?
Birdman THPS.
That's amazing.
And they kept, like, every time they'd have a concert, they'd be tagging me and stuff, you know?
Sure.
And so I actually went and listened to a couple tracks. I was like, these guys have it. Like, they play the hits.
Right.
You know, they play Ace of Spades and they play Guerrilla Radio
Yes.
and they play Superman, Goldfinger,
Right.
and Millencolin, No Cigar, and all those, you know, Primus and everything. And,
Right.
And then I started thinking, like, you know what? I should just invite those guys to open up for Bad Religion. Because those are the songs people want to hear.
Totally. It is
So
true.
that's what's happening.
So they're going to open up.
They're going to open up for Bad Religion.
And when is this?
It's June 9th. It'll be in San Diego. It hasn't been announced yet, but it's happening.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
And Bad Religion. So Bad Religion is going to play a full set of.
Bad Religion will play their own set.
Okay, their own set,
And then this other band will
gonna play all
all
the
the
songs.
hits from THPS series.
Wow, that's fucking awesome.
It's pretty cool, yeah.
That is so
I'm
cool.
really excited about
That
it.
is so cool. To see that kind of come together after all this time is kind of one of those things where, like,
Well,
did you,
we have this window of opportunity with the 20-year release.
Sure.
I'm no longer with Activision, but I feel like they're probably, they probably have enough reverence for the series that I hope they want to support it. I
would
haven't had
imagine.
that conversation yet either. So.
do they exist? I'm so ignorant. Do
Oh
they
yeah,
still
yeah.
exist?
Are you kidding? Yeah.
I
Activision.
don't even know
Yeah,
anymore.
World
I don't know
of
who makes
Warcraft,
games.
Call of Duty.
Well, see, all I know is the names of games. I don't like. I feel like Activision was such a. When I was playing video games when I was younger, I heard it all the time and saw it all the time. But now, everything that I know about video games is just is the name of them. Like all I know
Sure.
is that. But
Yeah.
Activision was kind of like synonymous with everything. Every game I heard of, I heard Activision as the company.
Yeah,
they kind of promoted themselves
It's a weird time
heavily.
for video games. There's only a few titles that really continue on.
Yeah,
and
that
rise
really
to the
keep
top
going.
like that. Yeah. So.
Did you feel like that was going to be influential or no?
Our game?
Yeah.
I thought that our game would influence skaters to buy PlayStations.
Really?
I mean, that for me, that was the mark of success.
Right.
That if I got some kid that loves skating
To buy a PlayStation.
to see it and recognize the authenticity of it and the fun aspects, like, oh, I'm gonna go play that. Then I was like, oh, my job is done.
That's fun.
And then what happened was it inspired this whole new generation of people to try skating.
Yeah, that
and
was
to
cool.
understand it.
I think it helped a lot of people that I knew that wanted to skate more because of it. You know, like because you were like,
yeah,
it just
for sure.
got you in this mode.
No, there's sort of there's been a few milestones in skating that started people skating,
Mm-hmm.
and for instance, in my day, I can't even think of what the inspiration was. It was actually just seeing my brother because he was a surfer.
Right.
And like surfing down the street, and that's what inspired me to want to try it. But Back to the Future
Right. That
started
was
a
huge.
whole generation of kids in the 80s. I mean, there are veteran pros these days that started skating because of that movie.
Oh, yeah, that's so funny.
And then
Because he rips off that pole off that kid's scooter.
yeah. And then our video game.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's the X Games.
I think the video game was super influential. I think it just made people feel like they could skate. It also probably broke a lot of kids' ankles, by the way. 'Cause
Maybe.
people were like, could I do 5 tricks in a row like this?
You know what's weird is they can now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's even more insane. The more I watch, there's a few people
Yeah.
that I follow on Instagram.
Oh, if you watch like Shane O'Neill.
Shane O'Neill.
He's
do you know Ellis Frost? Do you know who that is? I think that's his name. Ellis Frost, is that his name? He's a young guy. I have to look him up. I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll correct it if it's wrong. But he does stuff that I just can't wrap my head around. Like it's absurd. It's a lot of late flips, a ton of late flips.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Coming off of stuff where you're like, it's
Right,
not just
but
ground
that's
tricks.
all that stuff was like the combos that we would do on the game that we were like, this isn't even real.
No one can do this.
No one can do this. Yeah. And now that's what's happening.
Yeah, that stuff blows my mind. Yes, I watched Shane O'Neill in his backyard at his his little whatever he's got set up at his house, and I watch
who
him.
also does a lot of THPS stuff is Anthony Anderson.
I don't know who that is.
You look it up. You'll
Anthony
see.
Anderson. Yeah. I was gonna say there's an actor named Anthony Anderson, the black dude from Blackish, the bleak.
Oh, okay,
He's. I think that's
but
his
this guy
name, too.
he does.
You just made me think if he's doing
nose
tricks
grind,
like that.
lip slide, Smith grind, all impossible out. Like, it's crazy.
That kind of stuff. It becomes a new level of like where does this go next? Like that's the creepiest part. Is like, well, what is next? Because I remember thinking everything in that game was such a hyperbole. It was like, you can't. This will never be. But like, I guess the continuation of it, things are getting bigger. The more stuff I watch, and I still love the skating world because it's just something I've always loved it. I've never gotten away from it.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrible at skateboarding. I just loved it. And then I've just kept up with it because I just always
I know
love.
quite a few people like that they still appreciate
Oh, I
it.
love
They still look for new stuff,
all the time.
but they don't do it.
No, I mean I couldn't anymore. It's just I mean transportation maybe, but no, I just enjoy appreciating the world from afar because it's just like anything else. Pro sports that you watch, it's like the fat guy on his couch, he can't play fucking football, but he loves football. But skateboarding just did this thing from my childhood that was like so important that now when I find new guys doing shit like that, where I'm like, I get obsessed and I get in wormholes. I watch them for hours and hours and hours because I can't believe that the dedication and the
So on the flip side of that, especially when you were talking about like Shane O'Neill, who's probably headed to the Olympics and representing Australia and is, could definitely be the world champion.
Yeah, that's wild.
And has been. So when I talk about vert skating, which is more my wheelhouse, obviously, and there are a few guys skating vert now that are just like pushing it to limits we never imagined. That skate, they skate like they're naturals. They do stuff that looks magical,
right?
And they can't make any money
because there's no market.
There's no vert events. No one's even sponsoring vert skaters, let alone giving them models. And it's so crazy. I did a demo. So I have obviously this. I'm lucky because I live in a different sort of world of promotion.
Right.
In a lot of ways, I do a lot of speaking gigs, and so sometimes when I do a speaking gig, I can upsell them with a vert demo.
Yeah. Yes.
Like if it's a really big budget type of thing.
You're like,
we did a couple weeks ago in Salt Lake City at the Qualtrics event. They had Obama speaking. They had Oprah speaking. And
did Obama do vert?
No, but they hired me to be one of the speakers.
Right.
And then I was like, hey, by the way, I have a whole turnkey demo ramp set up. And they said, great, we'll put that at our party at the end of the weekend.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we got to do that. And so I hired a crew of skaters, Bucky Lassick, Andy McDonald, Lizzie Armato, all people who have been doing it. But there's this one guy, Paul Luke Ronchetti, and I tell the story just because I think he's one of the best vert skaters out there, and he does some tricks that I never imagined were possible on vert, and he does them 8 feet out. Wow. And he's amazing to watch. And I asked him if he would do the demo, and he had to go ask for time off his 9-to-5 job.
Just to come do the demo.
To come do the demo for about 4,000 people.
Wow. That
are, amazed by him and want his autograph and want photos, and then the next day go back to his 9-to-5. It's such a weird paradox to live in.
What in your opinion would be the thing that might help get vert back into the skate world? It's not dead forever. I mean, I don't think anything's dead, right?
No, I think that it's weird that the whole park movement, the park series, even the park event, like the park discipline is going to be in the Olympics, but like the Vans Park series, that combines vert with a little bit of street element. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that it's a relatively small vert, and so it's pretty limiting to what kind of tricks and spins you can do on it.
Sure.
Because you just can't get the airtime. So I feel like that's a good springboard for people to understand how truly difficult vert skating and to appreciate what the newer vert skaters can do.
Right.
So I think there's still hope for them, but right now in this window, it's just really hard. If like my best example is we see these competitions like Vans Park, Bondi Bowl, whatever,
Right.
and no one does 720s. Like 720 is an upper echelon vertical trick, and only a handful of guys can do it, maybe a dozen. But and that's something that you need to be competitive as a vert skater, and there's no skater or there's no thing big enough in these park series to even do that trick.
So yeah, the verts themselves aren't set up to even try it.
Yeah, so people are winning these big events with basic vert tricks. I guess that's my curmudgeon gripe of it all.
That's
you know what I mean?
The old man
Where
shaking
it's
the fist.
Yeah, it's like
we used to 900 when I was your
like,
age.
okay, the guy did a McTwist, a frontside blunt, a Smith grind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he spent all this time getting from point A to point B, and as I appreciate the difficulty of that,
Right.
but at the same time, I'm like, but if you just had a vert event, those tricks wouldn't even make the finals.
Right. It wouldn't even. Yeah, it would be nothing.
It wouldn't be nothing, but it would be like, all right, well, that's a good start.
Right. What's next?
We need to
Right.
move up. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's just a strange time for that. But at the same time, I think that with those park series and the accessibility of all the parks now, and with how prolific they are, that people will start to maybe build more vert ramps or bigger transitions.
Right.
To see these more difficult moves being done.
Well, I mean, imagine. Like, I think
But I mean, we're getting super nerdy into the skate.
So what? That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
And if they don't like it, too bad. That's how I feel.
And plenty of my friends have heard me talk about this. So
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like I think my range of fans is a lot of comedy nerds, a lot of. They just like intricate talks about something that's very specific. So I feel like the meta world is cool for people to listen because most people don't know about any of this stuff,
Right.
And I feel like
it's like this. It's like we're not going to see a 900 in the Olympics.
do you think? But
It's not going to happen because the transitions just aren't big enough for that.
it just can't happen, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very unlikely. Let's put it that way.
Right. Highly unlikely.
And yeah, and at a vert contest, maybe the top 2 or 3 guys could do it.
Could do it. Yeah. How many years did it take you to really get it down?
Oh, it took 10 years of attempts.
God,
really.
that's insane.
Yeah.
Was it because is it fear as much as it is
In the beginning,
it's fear
for sure. Yeah, because I didn't want to commit to spinning all the way around.
Right.
And then once I started committing to the spin, then I started committing to the landing. And then when I started committing to the landing, I broke my rib and got knocked out. And
Fun.
Yeah. I got a bunch of injuries. And then when I finally figured out how to not lean so far forward as I was landing, that was it. That's what it
Right.
took.
And I know you've been asked before about it, but every time I've ever watched the video of you doing that, that all the way pipe that you had to like basically flip
the
upside
loop.
down the
Yeah,
loop.
yeah.
Yeah. Every time that gives me the most anxiety of anything on the earth.
That
It makes me like nauseous.
That
to
is
watch.
the most. It's funny because it is the most frightening, one of the most dangerous, but actually easiest things to do.
Because you just have to keep going and you're good, right? You just have
That's
to keep,
it. You have to, because people approach it as a trick.
Right.
And so they go at it and they think they're going to do a backflip and they just don't position their body. And what it is a carve.
Right.
And you just have to keep pressure on your board through those transitions. You never really know when you're completely upside down.
You don't really, you wouldn't know because
You
there's
don't
so much
really
momentum,
feel it.
right?
If you're in the right position, your body's just holding strong all the way through, and then you see the flat bottom come around, and then you straighten out, and that's all it takes.
Right.
But
it's way more
it's
complex
so
than that.
frightening,
Yeah.
and people have, myself included, people have suffered the consequences so hard that it's just frightening. People are just like, "There's no way, I'm not doing it."
It just the looking at it scares me. If anybody hasn't seen it, you should look it up on YouTube.
But the thing about it is, it's funny with the loop. The people who have done it are those who have been obsessed by it.
Right. Like it's something to conquer.
Yeah, like I saw someone trying it in a skate magazine in 1979, 1980, and this guy Dwayne Peters, and he fell from the top and broke his collarbone, and that stuck with me. Not because he got hurt, but because I was like, it's got to be possible. Right. And there were shots of him like coming around almost all the way around, so you knew that physically it could happen.
Right.
And so I always had that with me. And when I finally had the opportunity to have one built, I was all in.
Have you ever had a moment that like say when you land a 900, have you ever had a moment in your career when you think, I don't know if it gets higher than this, or if I don't know if it gets better than this? Like, to give you time to think about it, I'll just say, for me, like, there's been a few things in my career where, not like I'm saying this is the pinnacle, because I feel like I hope I have a long, long way to go, but there are these moments that I'm like, fuck, I don't know, I hope I feel this again, and I don't know when it is that I'm going to feel that feeling again. But do you have that, or have you had that?
I definitely still have it in small ways with learning new tricks. Even at my age, like I still do create some new tricks. They're not high impact. They're not anything that the general public is going to understand.
Sure.
But I get that feeling of accomplishment and self-empowerment doing it. So that's the feeling I'm always kind of striving for.
Right.
But for sure, when in 1999, when I really had already told myself that was going to be my last year of competition, like I didn't really care what was going to come next, but I had competed for 20 years. I had a young family. I had to make a change. Like something had to give. And I was just competing all the time. And so to have that in the back of my mind, and then to have that moment of actually finally making a 900 in a public venue, which, you know, every time I tried 900, it was just me on a vert ramp with a dude with the camera.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
There were a couple of best trick events where we were trying it, but no one was really getting that close. And so I kind of had given up on it. And then to land it so unexpectedly, I had no plans to try it that night. So when I finally did make it in front of that crowd, and then they made that such a highlight, like it made Sports Center.
Yeah.
But that was it for sure. That was like, okay, I can stop competing.
That was that's like the tip of the cap type of thing.
That was it. Yeah. That was, I mean, for lack of a better term, like that was my mic drop. It was just like, oh, I can't do better than this in a contest. No other event's going to top this experience.
Did it feel the same? Did it feel that good too, or no?
It felt like a giant relief.
Because sometimes,
no, for me it was just like, I finally did that thing. Like I've been trying it for so long. It's over.
But it was less elation of happiness and more just like, thank God.
It was both. It was a relief, and it was definitely happiness. And then I was like, oh, this would be a good out.
Right.
This would be a good exit.
Right.
It wasn't until the following days and weeks where I realized how far that it resonated, and people were stopping me everywhere.
I mean, it culturally was like it was the only thing anybody talked about.
It was crazy, and it was such a strange. It was a strange feeling too, because, for instance, I learned 720s on a backyard ramp in Sweden in 1985.
Wow. What were you doing in Sweden?
I was there for this skate camp, this European skate camp where, you know, maybe 20 people signed up to be there for the week, and I was skating with 2 other guys, and I learned 720s. Sorry, I learned 720s to an audience of 2.
Wow.
And it was kind of like, oh, that's cool. There's a new one.
Way to go, man.
Yeah, and then I landed. I was like, yeah,
right.
You know, 720. And then so for me, those accomplishments were never met with much validation or appreciation beyond the skate community.
Right.
And then fast forward to 14 years later, I do a 900 and it makes news.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
That was such a strange, you know, it's such a strange paradox for me.
Sure. When you say the validation of people around you too, was your parents super supportive when you when you got into skating? Like, was your family real supportive?
I was lucky because I had older siblings, and so my parents.
But did you always feel supported, like in what you wanted to do?
By them, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the toughest hurdle to get over.
Yeah, because I was the youngest of 4. And by the time I came along, they had survived my older sisters and my brother in the 70s.
And all their bullshit, so then you were easy.
Yeah,
right?
and they were all into other stuff. My sister was a singer, and my brother surfed, and my dad would drive him, you know, Dawn Patrol to events and to Santa Barbara. And so by the time I came along much later. My dad was just like, whatever keeps him busy.
Right, get him away from us.
Just go do it. And so it was skating, and it was like, all right, we're driving you to the skate park, and he'd drop me off there and until they close.
What do you feel culturally that you're the most impressed by in the world of skating now? Like, what to you is the thing that you're like, wow, is like, whether it's a person, a team, a movement that's happening in skating, or like, what is it to you now that you're like, wow, fuck, that's impressive. That was like that felt like what you were doing for when you had started versus what's going on now.
I think it's the control that people have with their skateboard on such an intricate level that it's beyond like Olympic precision. It's just so incredible and precise and technical. That
it's creepy almost to me. Like sometimes I see it,
seems
I'm like,
unreal.
This is creepy. Yeah, it doesn't seem
and
real.
when I see people doing these crazy big flips or flip, and it used to be like, how many times can you flip your board? Like, there was a guy on our team that did a quadruple 360 flip, and to me that was the most incredible thing ever, and that was early 90s.
Right.
And now it's like he's flipping, his board is spinning, he's spinning,
right,
and then he's landing on a rail.
Right.
And then he's flipping out of it.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff is so, it's not beyond my comprehension, but it is unreal to me.
Right.
That it's come that far and that people can literally flip their board from a handrail. Like we tried to do in my generation was survive handrails.
Right. They flip on and flip out.
That's on the way down.
The craziest thing I've ever seen. Yeah.
And so to me, that's the movement that has stuck, but has become so incredibly difficult and mind blowing that I'm a fan. What can I say?
Right. How could you not be? Right. Yeah. You'll never stop skating, right?
I don't think so. I might stop doing it in public if I feel like I'm just the old guy out there.
Yeah.
Doing frontside grinds, but
at your house, you'll always do it at your house or somewhere.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can't. Yeah, I can never quit. But I still feel like I have the skills and I'm relevant enough and pushing it enough that I could do it, and be justified as a professional.
Yeah.
But if there comes a time when it's just like he's just playing the hits. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
and it feels like I'm just kind of the sad old guy at the bar, then I'll probably not be doing my big demos.
Sure.
Or video parts, but you'll definitely be able to find me on my ramp or in my backyard any given day.
Yeah, you'll still always be you. Yeah, you can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it. I mean, I feel like whether or not you believe in destiny or fate, and I have a hard problem with the idea of that, but I gotta know that aside from your talent and your hard work, aside from your hard work, you had to been gifted something so unique to become you that I just feel like that can't die. That doesn't die. Like that doesn't go away.
I don't think so. Yeah,
I just don't buy it.
I've definitely carved out this unique path to be a somewhat public figure, but also have these skills and be able to sort of walk that walk. And,
right.
And I think that a lot of people say, well, how do you stay relevant? I was like, because I keep skating.
Well, because you love it too.
Yeah,
that's what
I mean,
is,
that's
right?
really it. It's not like I stopped skating and then I just have this machine of licensing and products, and
right.
It's like I'm just resting on previous accolades. I could never do that or feel right about it.
Right.
And people are just like, how do you still do it? I was like, I just never quit.
Yeah, and you won't.
Like I said, I won't, but maybe I won't be so public about it.
more secretive. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to tie a bow on this, even though I want to talk to you for 8 days straight. But is there a site that you want to plug, or for where people want to go to get more information about what you're doing and what's going on, or what foundations you're
TonyHawkFoundation.org is our
huge
foundation for public skate parks. Tony Hawk Skate Jam on mobile. That's
mobile,
my big plug.
Baby. That just came out.
In November.
That was last year, right?
Yeah, but there's a whole world tournament that happens on it that you can actually compete against people all across the world. Wow. On iPhone and Android.
Who organizes that kind of shit?
That one came from a friend who had worked with this developer, and they said, hey, these guys have a skate game and they would like to work with you. And honestly, it wasn't a big financial deal,
right.
But I saw what they had, and I knew that with my not with my influence, but with my resources and my experience, that we could make something that was more akin to our previous series on consoles.
Right.
And so I dove in with them probably for about almost a year, tweaking it, and now I feel like we have it so it's, along the line as best we can with one full touch screen. Not analog controls.
Yeah, but everyone's mobile now. I mean, everything is on mobile.
Yeah, also it's fun. Like 2-minute session waiting at Starbucks.
Yeah, why not?
Do a bunch of combos. Like that's what it's free.
Right.
So for me, it was a fun project to be involved in, and I don't know if it's going to go gangbusters, but I don't really care. Like it doesn't matter. It was cool to do. Yeah.
So. If you enjoy it, I think that's the whole part of it.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's legit. I'm on it.
I'm out there. You're
Play against me?
You're playing against Tony. Yeah. Give him your username. That's it.
I'm Tony Hawk.
Find Tony Hawk on there.
I was Tony Skates because someone took my name, and then
wouldn't they? Wouldn't someone take
what's that?
Tony Hawk?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
but
they?
then,
I mean,
then
like
Maple Media magically gave it back to me.
yeah, they emailed that guy. They were like, "You're done. You're done."
He was squatting it. He wanted a large sum for it.
Well, dude, I so appreciate you coming by. I think it's incredible. I didn't give any context to how we know each other, and you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody. But I do appreciate
I had lunch
you coming.
with our
That's
mutual friend,
actually, you know what's so funny?
And it's his birthday today.
Is it?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay. I should say this actually. I want to tell the story fast. After I did Tony's show on Sirius, we went to go get sushi, and I'm about to pull into the sushi lot.
I tell that story all.
I'm about to pull in
the
the sushi lot, and there's this huge, I think it's like a Mercedes SUV, like the G-Wagon, I think is what it was. It's just big, obnoxious, huge wheels. And I'm like, who is this fucking guy blocking the middle of to get in?
Blocking La Cienega.
Yeah, just blocking the street.
La Cienega.
So I'm like, dude, this is unbelievable. Of course, I pull over to get out of the way because I'm getting, fucked by traffic. And I see him get out, and it's Kanye West. And, he gets out of his car, and I'm pulling over. And he, of course, he sees you and says, "What's up to you?" And then he's sitting like right next to us eating lunch. And in my head, I'm like, if I could tell the Chicago kid in me that I'm going to eat lunch with Tony Hawk and have Kanye West nearby, I'd be like, that's it. Kill yourself today. That's the best. That is the most odd, weird, funny day.
The funny thing is, I was approaching that SUV to tell the guy to get out of the.
I know. I watched you get up there to be like, dude.
I was
you're
like, dude, you're blocking traffic. And just right as I approached the car, the door opened, and I was like, oh, of course, it's
Kanye West. He's like, Tony Hawk. You're like, okay, I can't yell at you anymore.
Yeah,
I guess
all right.
it's not gonna do me any good.
High five.
Right, high five. Well, dude, I appreciate it. Go to the Tony Hawk Foundation.org. That's what it is. Check it out.
Yeah.
Go to AndrewSantino.com.
Birdhouse Skateboards. Birdhouse Skateboards.
Birdhouse Skateboards. Birdhouse Skateboards. Birdhouse Skateboards.
Say it 3 times, and we'll show up in your living room like Beetlejuice.
We'll put all that link in the description. Go to AndrewSantino.com. Next week, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, come on out. Come have some fun and say hi. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Whisk, 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 whisk.
You were that creature in the ginger beard.
Sturdy and ginger.
Like vampires, the ginger gene is a curse.
Gingers are beautiful.
You owe me $5 for the whiskey and $75 for the horse.
Gingers? Oh, hell no.
This whiskey is excellent.
Ginger. I like gingers.